Something odd started happening during the COVID lockdown that most people didn't even notice. They actually kind of ignored it. Your ATM machines, I'm going to say ATM machines. I know it's redundant. ATM, M stands for machine. I'm going to say it because I don't know. I think it just works. It makes more sense in the context of this news story.
You can just say ATMs. ATMs.
I will say, all right, I'll say ATM. Yeah, if I say ATM machines, don't let me know in the chat.
Okay, I was gonna say because I'll slightly die inside every time you say ATM machine, but you do you.
No, but it's funny. It's like I don't usually ever say that because I always correct people with it. But now, in the sake of this, just so I don't know why I want to make sure you understand I'm talking about a machine here.
Did you ever see the movie Mickey Blue Eyes? The restaurant's called the La Trattoria.
Yeah,
that's like what you're doing.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Anyway, have you noticed that ATMs are disappearing and bank branches are disappearing? Well, here's what happened. The place where you would get cash was suddenly closed for health reasons during COVID, right? These ATMs were closed down, not just in the United States, but all across the Western aligned world, most notably Australia. Thousands upon thousands of ATMs were turned off and they stopped working. They were just shut down intentionally. Of course, they were really worried about the COVID on the screen, right? They were really worried about when you touch the screens and all of that. It was the pandemic, so no one needed them. And of course, COVID was nefarious and it could live on the keypads of ATMs, right? You get all that COVID all over those keypads, you're going to get sick. And we don't have enough Clorox wipes in the world to keep up with that, to kill all of the COVID. So we had to shut them all down, right? This was how they spun it to us.
Yet we were still allowed to get gas.
Right. No, but you had to use a little plastic hand thing, like if you were getting gas, right? Yeah. So you don't need cash anyway, right? They don't want you to have cash because you're at home ordering food from Uber Eats anyway. So you don't need these ATMs right now. We're going to shut them down. It'll cause COVID. You're at home ordering on Uber Eats or getting your Amazon delivery packages. So cash is trash. Plus, cash transmit COVID as well.
Well, health experts say the coronavirus can live on surfaces like cash for up to 10 days. That has many people worried about shopping and other everyday tasks.
Yeah, that's right. Cash carries COVID. Still my favorite soundbite of all time, by the way. I love that. So don't lick your dollar bills or your coins because COVID, because cash has COVID.
Well, I mean, hang on. I don't think the virus can live outside of a body for 10 days.
I don't think so
where
either.
Did they come up with that number?
I don't know. But hey, this is the local news report. This is your Action News report, and whatever this hell this was, Chicago.
It's that money that you put right down here, maybe. I
guess.
Or up your bum.
That are chewing on their bills.
Right.
Is that where you store?
It's the money you put in your bra.
I'm going to go looking for some cash, some petty cash a little bit later, if you know what I mean. So in the UK alone, over 8,000 ATMs were shut down. 8,000. 13% of all cash machines in the United Kingdom switched off, not replaced. 8,000 of them gone. And the Wall Street Journal reporting in the U.S., the number was actually far greater. 19,000 that we know of were shut down during COVID. Here's how CBS explains the closure.
The U.S. peaked with 470,000 ATMs across the country in 2019. That number dropped to more than 451,000 by the end of 2022. Now, the trend started during the pandemic when many people stopped using cash.
So what's the big deal, right? Once the COVID hysteria was passed, I'm sure all of those machines were turned back on, right? They pulled off the police tape that they wrapped around these things, remember that? And they fired them back on. Wrong. None of them were turned back on, in fact. In fact, of the 8,000 that were turned off in the UK, they were done so permanently. In the US, the 19,000 that were shut during the pandemic, permanently and growing. A study shows that all ATMs will cease to exist by the year 2037. I think that's actually pretty generous. I think it'll probably happen sooner. Let us know in the chat. Do you think 2037, that'll take that long? 14 years? I'm doing my math, right? 14 years or so? That these things will still be in existence? I don't think so. I think it'll be shorter time than that. I think it'll be sooner. And the same study also says that bank branches will be gone by the year 2041. Just like telephone booths. Remember those where Superman? I mean, if Superman were around today, there's no telephone booths. He'd have to use the spinny door things. That's about all he's got left to use. No phone booths. No ATMs to change in anymore.
Yeah.
How's Superman going to be super without it, you know?
Yeah, he'd have to go into a phone charging station.
Right. He'd have to go into one of those, a tiny home. That's the new trend. So he could go to a tiny home. The same thing is happening in Australia.
Nursing booth.
Nursing.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the same thing is happening, or one of the gender neutral bathrooms. That's where he could go now. So the same thing is happening in Australia, where all of these ATMs are being shut down and the bank branches are being shut down. And it's not just the ATMs, but the small regional banks are closing down permanently as well. In Australia, more than 400 Australian bank branches just closed, new figures show. These numbers are out today, October 18th. This morning, Australia reports that more than 400 banks have closed their doors permanently. Over 700 ATMs just shut down. So what's going on here? Well, it doesn't take a genius to see the writing on the wall. The move towards CBDCs, Central Bank Digital Currencies, away from cash, the World Economic Forum plan, is kicking into high gear. And some cities, by the way, thankfully are actually fighting back on this. Certain states are fighting back on this, but I want to highlight my home city of Philadelphia. Go Phillies. They're making it illegal to refuse cash in Philly. Philly has a lot of problems, but they got this one right. Maybe this is the one thing they got right. And good cheesesteaks and great.
Yes, but would you
pretzels.
want to insure an ATM in downtown Philadelphia with the crime rate right now?
No. And you kind of, you're bringing up a great point, which we'll get to a little bit later. But the idea is like because a lot of the banks are getting rid of their branch related ATMs, like Bank of America shutting theirs down because they have to insure them. So then most of the ATMs you now see or are going to see are third party independent ATMs that will charge you $2 and $3 just to take money out of them. Remember those back in the 80s and 90s? And then suddenly those were gone?
Yeah, well, you'd be like, oh, I'm Wells Fargo. I can't go to that ATM. That's Bank of America.
And then, bank fees, ATM fees were like disappeared because it became like a thing. You don't have those anymore. Now that you're a Bank of America customer, Wells Fargo, like ATM fees, those are gone. But now they're back. Because Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they're all shutting down their own ATMs and now in favor of these third-party ones that need to be insured. So they have to insure the carriers. Who's going to go into downtown Philadelphia? I'm from Philly. You're going to drive there with an armored car full of cash and go to these ATMs. And then who's the insurance is going to provide for those ATMs as well? So that's the other big side of this thing. But my home city of Philadelphia is making it illegal to refuse cash, saying it discriminates against those who don't have credit cards or digital money. So Philadelphia is, of course, where America's first mint was born, right? So the U.S. Mint is there in Philadelphia, and it's where coins and currency are created. So I think they're a little biased in that. So that it's great what Philly's doing, saying you must allow us to use cash, but what if you can't get cash? Like it's great to say that, but what if you can't get access to the cash? And so if you're unbanked or you don't want to use this digital currency, and now cash is drying up because there's no ATMs and there's no bank branches, where exactly are you going to get cash if they take away your access to it? I'm curious about this. Seriously, if you take away the bank branches, you take away the ATMs, how exactly are you supposed to get cash? Can anybody tell me in the chat how you would get it? How you would get it?
Unless you have your paycheck direct deposited into like a Cash App or a bank where you just use a debit card the whole time, if you're somebody who's unbanked, you'd have nowhere to cash your check. So your check is pretty much just a no good piece of paper. Like how in the world would that work?
Well, you go to the same day, what is it, the loan or the payday, the payday cash checking places, and then they take like what, 10%?
They charge egregious fees, yeah.
And then what if they don't have cash to give you?
I don't know.
Yeah, right? I'm saying if they stop taking cash and they only take cards and all that, then,
what's going to happen here?
You'd be screwed.
So, of course, why this is happening is we're getting very, very close now to the full implementation of the CBDCs, Central Bank Digital Currencies. Slowly removing cash from circulation is, of course, part of the plan by the World Economic Forum. Move the power from the Treasury over to the Fed, over to these unelected bankers, these central bankers. 2 weeks ago, the head of the digital management director for the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, let the cat out of the bag on why they are moving quickly towards a CBDC and a digital currency. His third point here is all about control. It's all about surveillance and programming how and when you would get access to this money. And basically, if we don't want you to have the money, it expires.
The second aspect that CBDC can help improve financial inclusion is because of its legal tender status. Because CBDC is an obligation of central bank. And the obligation of central bank is a legal tender in every country. So it is widely accepted. That creates potential value for everyone to use it. And finally, the third way we think CBDC can improve financial inclusion is through what we call programmability. That is, CBDC can allow government agencies and private sector players to program, to create smart contracts, to allow targeted policy functions. For example, welfare payment. For example, consumption coupon. For example, food stamp. By programming CBDC, those money can be precisely targeted for what kind of people can own and what kind of use this money can be utilized, for example, for food. So this potential programmability can help government agencies to precisely target their support to those people who need support. So that way can also improve financial inclusion.
Yeah. So China loves this, right?
I'm 100%. I'm 100% sure that this doesn't go both ways, because I mean that's the scary thing. Like if you have this, if your money is suddenly like contractually obligated, let's say like when it's tax time, like you might have just like lost your job and you're struggling to keep food, and they're just like, nope, sorry, we're grabbing it. There's nothing you can do about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, then how often are they wrong, too, with their calculations? There are people that get the calculations wrong all the time. You owe $10,000 and you actually don't, and then they take that,
Yeah.
Right. That's why I would never use the federal government has now their own sort of H&R Block where you just put in your tax return and they say, you owe this much. No.
No, thanks.
No, thank you. And I would never, that's why anytime there's any kind of refund on our taxes, I'll take the check. I'll take the physical check. I do not want to give them our bank account number that they can just reach in and deposit it, because I'm too afraid that they'll reach in and take if they want.
So China has done this, of course. They've rolled this out, and it has not really worked to their, the way they wanted to, in fact, and, it's still sort of, I guess, in the pilot stages, but, China is obviously a different animal altogether, totally different country structure than the United States. And so, the United States, we value our freedoms, right? Our freedom to be able to transact and do whatever we want, unlike the way that China does things. This is the way we want to be able to transact with our business.
Well, Carol Roth in her book points out that even though China says they have millions of accounts, that the average deposit is like $3.
In their central bank digital currency accounts.
In these accounts.
But they also, in China, they've also kept the structure of the banks, the individual banks. So it's different than the way the United States structure is going to roll out. So your local, like regional banks are going to dissolve. Their credit unions are going to be gone. So it's going to be structured differently than it is in China. So it's interesting.
And I got a list here because I was looking this up last week. JP Morgan Chase is going to close 21 branches by 2023. PNC has closed 47, Wells Fargo 23, Bank of America 13. So if these large banks are closing, then the small banks have no chance.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And they're gobbling up small banks as it is and consolidating them, and then getting rid of banks and, of course, getting rid of cash at the same time. Getting rid of cash and banks is precisely what they want to do, as Catherine Austin Fitz points out. Listen.
What effect is central bank digital currency going to have on our traditional banks?
It will wipe them out. In other words, you are going to wipe out all local community banks, all credit unions, all small institutions within some period of time. And it'll take you a while to wipe them out, but if you look at what it will do to their fundamental economics, and you're going to put them in a position where they have to work for you, they can't represent their customer.
So if we lose our banks, then we lose our ability to transact the way we want. And we are now at the mercy of these central banks for everything in our lives. Here's Catherine again.
I agree with you. This is the most important point. Unless we have a sovereign state government protecting sovereign individuals who are free to transact, including transact privately, without invasive technology, we will have no sovereignty. And then you're talking about 100% central control by the bankers. And the expression that I use, which I think is very accurate, is we're talking about a technology that, in combined with other systems, can turn your home, your car, and your community into a digital concentration camp. We're talking about the end of human freedom and centrally controlled through the financial system.
So I don't give a rat's ass what China does. China's its own country. I don't care. I care about the United States. I care about what the United States does. I care about what European countries do. I care about what the Western world is doing right now, but specifically the United States running full force into central bank digital currencies, giving unbelievable power to the Federal Reserve to run our lives, taking away our ability to transact, closing down accounts. We've already seen this with the protests in Canada, right? We've seen what happened with the trucker convoy, taking away people's GoFundMe accounts, shutting down PayPal, Cash App. There's all sorts of stories, of course, what happened after January 6th in the United States. So they're taking away our ability to do transactions. When you take away cash, you take away ATMs, you take away local bank branches. What do we have left then? I mean, I guess you use gold. You call up our friends at Lear. You call up our friends at Lear Capital, I guess, and you get gold, right? Gold and silver or something. I mean, and then you start using gold coins. Or I saw someone in the chat say rebels will come together and start being able to hand cash among themselves. Yeah, but like in Europe, they're making it illegal. Like if you over a certain amount threshold, then it becomes an illegal gray transaction.
Right, but in Portugal,
a terrorist.
They would never get rid of the multibanco because so many elderly people pay their bills that way that don't understand how to pay bills online.
Right, they just go to the ATM.
They go to the ATM and you pay your bill with a code. They wouldn't know what to do.
Yeah. I don't know. Let us know your thoughts on this in the chat below. And I think one thing you can do is call up your local member of Congress and say, we don't want a central bank digital currency. I absolutely do not want this in my home state. Call up your bank's representatives. Tell them you do not want them getting rid of your ATMs. You want to be able to actually use cash for transactions. And in fact, I think it's smart to take out as much cash as you can and keep it on hand. On a regular basis. When you go to the ATM once a week or so, take out some cash and put it in your safe or in your storage.
Well, that's not financial advice. That's just what we're saying because we're observing the deletion of our ability to transact with hard cash. So
don't forget to. I was gonna say, don't forget to buy a bunch of the little airport bottles of liquor because those will also be a good currency.
Right.
That's what Catherine Austin Fitz says. Like one of the biggest currencies when the Soviet Union collapsed, people didn't give a crap about money. They cared about vodka. Like that was the transactional, like vodka actually. So thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.